Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel. And as you can tell from the t-shirt, just about, I think, that means we are back to Titans and we are back to full-scale Titans. And in this video, we are back on leg duty on the Warlord Titan itself. And we're going to be finishing up some of the weathering, well, not quite finishing, but nearly finishing. And then we're going to be moving on to the leg panels, or the lower leg panels, and one of the thigh panels. And we're going to be going through some celestial effects and the standard Legio Astorum colour scheme that I'm going for on this model. Before we do jump into the video though, one quick reminder, if you haven't seen my recent video on tanks for Franck. Now this is the final week. This video will be going up on the Tuesday, which means you've got until Friday the 31st, so only, what's that, 3 or 4 days to go to enter to win yourself a Steel Legion tank company. I'll just put a quick picture up for you guys so you can see exactly what you could be in for winning. And this is a charity event where we've been gathered together as a small community to paint an entire Steel Legion tank company, and all those donations going towards Franck, who is a 7-year-old boy who has leukemia. So really would appreciate it if you want to go and check that video out. A link is in the description below. I don't know, I appreciate it's the end of the month, so it's payday time, so humble brag, please go and take your well-earned cash and give us a fiver. You never know, you might win several £100 worth of painted tanks. So thank you very much. But let's get straight into this video. So before we get into the fun and games of the armour panels, we're just going to finish up and do a little bit more on the couple of bits on the legs that I didn't get round to doing in that first video, which seems like such a long time ago now. So I'm just going to use a couple of different shades. I'm going to use the famous Agrax and the even more famous Nuln Oil, both from Games Workshop. So I'm going to just, all the metal plates that I've had before, that have had no real work done to them before, I'm just going to shade those randomly, well, kind of randomly, with Agrax and Nuln Oil. So anything that was silver was going to get Nuln Oil, except these, what's it, the ball joint rotating part. It looks like a large cog, so I'm going to give that a bit of Nuln Oil as well. And then all the metal and silver parts are going to get that as well. Anything that was already a little bit in the sepia colour from the first video, that's going to get Agrax Earthshade. It just looks a little bit more oily, a little bit more worn, a little bit more natural. So I'm just going to slather that over in all of these little areas here. So especially around that ball joint ankle section there, that's going to get a bit of Agrax. And it means that it can settle around the bolts and the rivets and so on, and just look a little bit more cool. Now the other section that I hadn't got to do, so apologies for this funny camera angle, I'm just trying to avoid, you know, obliterating the view with my hand. So this large metal engine section at the back here was Nuln Oil washed, and then I went through two shades of silver. So starting with a gunmetal silver dry brush, and then a chainmail silver, and you can see the sort of the effect that this has given. So it looks a little bit more metal-like, I guess. Now before I consider this part finished, I am going to be doing some weathering powders and get some mud and other detritus in there as well. I'd really want to avoid using any kind of rust effect though, because I feel like Imperial guys look after their war machines very well, so there won't be so much rust. It would just be dirt from the battle. Now you can see I've actually started work on the pistons as well, just showing a few pictures of those pistons with a bit of an oil wash and some hydraulic wear and tear on those piston rods. Now I have covered that in previous videos, exactly how I've done that, and I'll put a link up in the little card section on this video, and a link in the description below of how I've completed that effect. All I've done is just use that same thing directly onto here. So this is just a few pictures, a few stills, so you can see those effects that have been applied just on the pistons on this left leg, and I'll be replicating that on the right leg when the time comes. But we're going to move into some armour panels while all this was beginning to dry, because there's a lot of oil stuff going on in there. So what we've got for that same leg that I've done all that weathering on is the 4 lower leg parts and the 3 main armour panels of the lower leg. There's also a, yep, there we go, the upper thigh and knee cover as well. And these have all been prime black. They've been sat prime black for a long time, but it's time to now get some colour on them. We're going to start with night blue. I'm going to do that on all of those, the top half of the upper thigh section, but I'm not going to do it on the large leg section, the large main armour panel, because I'm going to do a celestial effect on that, which we're going to show a little bit later on in the video. Now, the lighting in my room today is a little bit horrible. It's a very, very bright day outside. I did try and do this with natural daylight, and then it did fail a little bit because of the shadow within the airbrush booth. But this is basically a very, very dark blue. And all I'm going to do is just apply that all over the armour panel. It doesn't matter whether you go over the edges on this. It's just to give it a good solid blue coat. In fact, I did 2 of these blue coats just to get that full coverage on these particular components. And I'm going to do that, as I said, on all 4 of these bits and the 2 side leg panels, the sort of the calf guards, I guess you want to call them. And then also the groin guard, and that's pretty much it. Oh, sorry, the upper side of the thigh panel as well. On the knee guard itself, I'm probably going to go with a yellow, but we're also going to be applying some stripes to some of this as well. But I just want to get the blue effect complete. So the video is running at 2 times speed, otherwise this video would be about an hour long. I think it was before I edited it. So yeah, this isn't a natural speed airbrush, just for those that are wondering. And we're going to continue through this. So each of these is going to get 2 coats, as I said. It doesn't take long for them to dry. By the time you've actually got through the last set of armour panels, it's pretty much dry. It's just the way that the paint dries when it's been suitably thinned, and it's quite a warm day as well. It's actually beginning to turn out quite nice in the UK at the moment. So we're enjoying some good drying time in this rather warm hobby studio that I've got. So that's the 4 lower sections, the 2 calf guards, and then we're just going to go on to the upper thigh guard here as well. And as I said, I'm going to avoid doing it on the knee part here, because I am going to go over that and brighten that up and use a yellow on that knee guard piece. I do believe I have some decals for this I'm going to be using, but we're going to go through some other airbrush effects first. The next stage then is Imperial Blue, which I think if I translate that to Games Workshop, let me just jump across to my converter. Imperial Blue is Cantor Blue in current Games Workshop terms. And Night Blue, I don't even think they do a Night Blue anymore. I'm just going to cross-reference that. No, it's just any real dark blue that you've got. So you may need to take Cantor Blue and mix it with black to get the same effect. But what we're doing here is just going to go along the inside of those blue panels that we've done, and we're just going to leave that darker blue in the recess where it meets the edge trim. Now, there's a lot of edge trim, but you just need to be a bit more focused on where you're applying this and make sure your airbrush is running relatively smooth. As you can see here, I'm having to keep clearing the nozzle because I'm running it at a low PSI, which means that the drying time on the needle itself is actually pretty quick. And I need to make sure that this is flowing quite nicely. But you can see here, I'm just bringing that on the inside of the panel, quite targeted, just leaving that dark in the recess. And you can see there, the Imperial Blue compared to the base coat blue, all on its own. And then once we've done that, and we've spent about an hour doing this, you can see the effect. You see that's still partially drying, but as you can see, I've done all of those pieces that we were talking about earlier, so we're good to go. But obviously, I'm doing as much as I can at the same time, so I have done the other leg set of panels as well because they're going to be in the same finish. But I just thought I'd show you that even though it took me an hour to do the others, it was actually about 2 hours work just to do all of those lower leg sections. Now we're now going to apply a bit of contrast, a bit of what's the best way of putting this? Marbling kind of celestial, not really celestial, but just to break up a solid coat of blue. And we're going to use 2 inks here. We're going to use Druchii Violet, and the blue one, if I just reach over here, is Drakenhof Nightshade. So this is going to be randomly applied. Now this is the same effect as I've done on my Titanicus stuff, my Armiger Knights, pretty much every Titan or Knight class, same effect. If you want to go through some of my other videos, you'll see this pretty much done the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the Druchii Violet first. And the way to apply this is in a random mottled effect. So I'm just going to go over it in random lines, just picking out where I feel like it should just go, really. There's no fine art to this. It is purely just applying the purple in kind of swirly but kind of straightish lines, just to sort of break up and apply a mottled effect. And you can see that on the camera now. You can just about see that as it's still drying. That purple is coming across quite nicely over the imperial blue that we've already done. And we're going to do that as I headbutt the camera. We're going to do that across all of these armour panels exactly the same, and just going to go through all of those nice and simple. And then what we're going to do is we'll switch up to the blue and we'll do exactly the same effect. And that's just going to come up in a second now. I'm not going to show you doing this on every panel because I'm sure you'll be very bored. So we're going to switch to Drakenhof Nightshade, just make sure that's running clear through the airbrush. And we're just going to do those same kind of things, just in a slightly different area to where that Druchii Violet was already applied. So just nice sort of swirly, mottledy lines, just to give that variation on colour. And hopefully in this picture here, it's a little bit clearer to see as I've got that in the light box. You can see that effect. But we're going to move on to the best part of this now. This is the highlight of the video, in my opinion. And that is taking these large focal leg guards. These are quite big panels. In fact, they are as tall as an Adeptus Titanicus Warlord on their own. So what we're going to do is a planetoid, celestial, galaxy kind of effect. And to do that, we're going to be masking off the areas with the planets that we've got here. Again, similar effect to what we had with the Adeptus Titanicus Warlord that I've shown a video on. Again, I'll try and remember to put links and so on in the description and cards up in appropriate areas. Now what we need is some planet type colours. So I've got a dark orange, a light orange and a yellow, and then I've got a dark green and a light green, and a crumpled up magic piece of paper. Any old bit of newspaper will do, just to give you some kind of texture effect. So what we're going to do is just pick out a random area where we're going to want our first planet to go, and then we're going to apply a red coat to this, or a dark orange coat, sorry, just big enough that it will, the largest sticker I'm going to be using will cover, well, won't cover the area, sorry. So this has to be bigger than the area of the sticker you're using. Now if you've got different size stickers, you just need to double check, just exactly like that. I need to do that a little bit bigger, and then we need to let that dry. So just feathering that out. You haven't got to be too accurate with it because we'll mask all that out a bit later on. Now once that's dry, I'm going to go over that with a lighter orange. So just going to load up the airbrush, get that going, and then we want to leave that slightly wet, and then grab our bit of newspaper, and then just dab that onto the planet that you're doing here. And what that would do is we create a weird little effect, which kind of looks like, what's the best way of putting it? It just sort of makes the planet look a bit more textured, I guess is the way to do it. So while we're letting that one dry, we're going to go and do another one. This time we're going to do this with a green and a brown and a lighter green. So again, making sure that that circle is larger than the sticker we're going to use, which is basically a mask. And do that and let that one dry. And then we're going to apply just a lighter one up here. I'm using a light grey, like Fenrisian grey here. And again, I'm just going to put that overlapping the trim this time, just so that it looks, you know, just a bit more funky, you know, because you're not going to have that a large round circle. You're going to have that cut off because of the size of the armour panel. So we can go back to the other ones now while that dries. Our first stage needs to be fully dry before the newspaper effect can work. And what we're going to do is apply a little bit of yellow on this one now, and then we're going to dab that newspaper over that. Again, pulling some of that paint up, and you can see it sort of roughs up and looks a bit weird. But that's exactly the effect that we want it to look like. It's going to look like a hot gas giant, or whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't look like a planet just yet, right? This is just the underside of it before we mask it and do the effects. Now I'm going to use a lighter green, same kind of thing over here. Dab the newspaper on there, break that up a little bit. Just dab that newspaper around. And it just kind of breaks up the lighter green so that some of that darker green underneath shows through. What I didn't do on this video is actually show you, I did a couple of brown patches as well to represent continents or whatever you want to call it on a more solid planet compared to the sort of the gas giant of the red, green, or red and yellow one, sorry. Now we're going to go back over the grey with a little bit of white just to brighten that up as well. Just get that flowing through the airbrush. Give that a little douse of white, and then that one's done as well. Now with the planetary bodies all done, we're going to move on to what colours we're going to be using for the actual galaxy effect. So I've got black, a white, a light blue, the orange, the red, some purples and pinks. And that's what we're going to use to make the fancy effects that's going to make it look like these planets are in a galaxy. And the first thing we need to do is actually add a little bit of shade and a little bit of highlight to the planets. You can actually see on that green one where those little brown pieces are as well, actually. So just apply a couple of random bits of brown and then dab that off with a newspaper. Same kind of thing that we've done already. But what we want to do is shade these a little bit and then highlight from the other end. So we've got that big bright one that's going to be generating the light source. So what I'm going to do is just shade that at the bottom there in a bit of black. And again on this side so that the lighter side is towards the brighter large star that we've got up in that top left hand corner. And then on this side we're just going to apply a little bit of light, so straight on with the white, and just apply that so it creeps over the edge of those planets. And we're not going to use any newspaper there, this is pure light and dark shade, and that is pretty much them done. So once they're thoroughly dry, have to make sure they're really dry. It doesn't take long because you're airbrushing. We're going to take our little circular masks that we're going to do and apply that over those areas so that you've captured a little bit of the dark, a little bit of the light, and then all the planet colour underneath. And the first thing we do is just going to blacken all of the overspray that you've already got. And that's exactly what I've done there. So we can get rid of all of that other overspray from the base coat and the details of those planets. With those masks in place, we're now going to add our galaxy effect. And I'm going to start off with a darkish purple. I think it's Warlock purple. Again, I'm just going to try and translate that from Warlock purple or Warlord purple. It's basically Screamer pink. As I quickly change tabs and go and check my Vallejo to GW colours. Now, what we're going to do here is just apply this randomly across the panels, just picking out any areas you want. I want this to be a kind of a main colour, so I'm going to be applying that in randomly large areas just to add that galaxy feel. And what we're going to do is we're going to highlight that up a little bit and add some squid pink. I think the squid pink is the lighter one, or Emperor's Children, I believe, is the Games Workshop equivalent. So we're just going to switch that up, and I'm going to apply a little bit of purple to add some natural light into those the darker Warlock purple colour. So we just get that running through the airbrush. You can see that change tone immediately, and then what we're going to do is just run that on the inside of those larger areas we've got, and just, you know, overspray it a little bit. It's all good. It's all supposed to be, you know, naturally occurring purple and light and so on. It's all very cool. So I wonder what you think. It's a bit of a, you know, you've got to do this kind of thing reverse, right? So the thing that you want at the front, the big detail pieces of the planets, but you've got to do those first because that's what you want to remain masked off. Now what we want to do next is add some weird, I don't even know what the phrase of this is. I've been watching Star Trek recently and I even can't think of what they call it, sort of nebula effect, I guess. So what we're going to do is take a bit of newspaper with a rough edge. You can see I've just randomly torn that in some weird shapes, and that adds that sharp edge to one side, and then we can bleed over with the white on the other side. I'm just picking some of the random corners that I've torn off here, applying that over the purple, and that gives us this nebula kind of effect. It just adds that really cool kind of effect. I think it's looking quite nice already, to be honest. But just all those purple areas, and then there we go. So we've got purple, we've got light, and you can see there, in my opinion, I think that looks galaxy-like already. But what we're going to do is going to add another colour to this, and we're going to go with blue on this particular leg panel. So I've got this light blue, which I think is, let me just double check the colours. It's electric blue from Vallejo, which would be Techless blue from Games Workshop. So again, I'm just going to pick out some other areas of this dark nebula that we've got going on. Just pick out some random shapes, just apply that in a similar kind of way that we did that purple. Now because it's already quite a light colour, I'm just going to go straight to white here. Do the same thing with a different piece of paper so that we've got some different random shapes going on. Use that as my edge mask, and then just apply that to those blue pieces already. Just let that white bleed over the edge, but you've got that masked off straight edge, so it looks kind of like a light catching effect. You could be a bit more accurate with this if you really wanted to, depends how finicky you want to be. But just putting in some random shapes and just putting that white bleed across all of these galaxy style shapes. And that is that so far for those colours. So on this leg you could keep going if you really wanted. You could add reds and greens and other weird colours if you really wanted to, but I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. What will really make this stand out is when you start adding stars and so on. But while we've got the white paint out, what I'm going to do is add the corona effect to the planets. So once you've got a free-flowing white, all I'm going to do is overspray that around the circular masks that we've already got on those planets. And that will just add that little corona glow around those planets. And when you pull these masks off, you'll see the effect this does. And I think it makes the planet look really cool. So just a little bit of overspray around those from the centre of the mask that you're using over the edge, and just give that a nice little corona effect. Now what we can do is we'll do the grand reveal and we'll have a look what happens when you take those stickers off. And there we go. I think that looks pretty damn awesome. So you can see that light and dark shade that we pre-shaded, the planet effect that we've got, and with that corona, I think they look like they belong in the galaxy. So I'm quite happy with the way that turned out. So what we need to do now is just add some stars and other bits and pieces to this effect, comets or whatever you want to do. So we're just going to get pure white and we're just going to add some of that effect to this, and it would break up all of that area and make it look a bit more like a night sky, a bit more like a galaxy. Go and watch Star Trek, you'll go and see what kind of effect you mean. There's lots of stars out there. So what you want to do is just apply lots of little dots in various sizes. You could even apply this to like a palette knife or the end of a toothbrush and randomly flick it onto the model. I was being a bit more targeted, and there we can see the net effect. So I've got some larger ones, I've got some ones with a little tail on which will act like a comet, larger small little dots, and there we go. And then the final thing we're going to do is just prep up ready for the gold trim. So I'm going to use Brassy Brass for the gold trim as the undercoat. And you can see here I've gone on and done the other leg. So I've gone with a more red effect on this one. So it looks a bit more hot and burny. But I've just applied that brass trim. So what we'll do is we'll just show a few pictures in the light box taken with the digital camera, so you can see a little bit more clearly than the standard webcam that I've been using to take the video. So you can see those planets. I think they look really cool. Just enough light and dark on each edge to have that effect. And then when you put it, you know, just ready to go onto the model, you can see what this is going to kind of look like when the effect has been completed. And that's with all the gold trim still to go. So this is a better shot of the other leg I've done. So all I've used is reds and oranges, exactly the same way that I used the blues and purple on the other leg. I didn't want them to look identical. But the planet effect was the same. I think I used some slightly different colours, but that's the net effect that you're going to get. And the brass has just had one coat ready for the gold and then the shades afterwards. So there we go then, guys. The legs are nearly done. So I've still got all that armour trim to do. That's going to take forever. So lots of gold trim. I'm probably not going to do a video on gold trim because it is pretty boring. It is brass, gold, Reichland flesh shade, and then a little bit of dry brushing of silver around the edges. Not particularly exciting to do a video on gold trim, and there is a lot of it. But I will do some videos on some of the other details on the armour panels, like some stripes and so on, just go through some of that, just to get that added bit of detail in. But yeah, I've just got a few weathering powders and so on to add, and then the legs are complete. We can move on to some cool stuff with the upper body. But I hope you're enjoying this video. I do apologise, there are quite large gaps between my Titan videos at the moment, unless you're watching the baby Titan stuff. There's lots of those. But Fresh Force Challenge is well and truly underway. So I've been doing a lot of that as well. But really excited to bring you yet another video on the big Warlord himself. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And I shall catch you guys on the next video.